Testing 1, 2, 3.
I can hear you.
I can hear you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any problem with the video?
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Tom.
But
I do apologize. It appears as though my webcam is not working. Many of you will appreciate that.
Yes, we do.
Four 30.
Larry, we're ready. We're ready. Is Jackson talking? Okay.
Jackson, I think we lost you, but we're ready to start if you are.
Ready when you are.
We're ready on this end.
Okay. Well, with that, thank you. We will go ahead and call the June 3rd, 2020 Executive Committee Public Hearing to order. Valerie, we all set to start the meeting? That's a yes.
All right. And now I'm gonna
call.
I will call roll. So Jackson Bogan,
Present.
Larry Leverins, I'm sorry, Larry, I didn't hear you. I see you. Jerry Reynolds,
Present.
Gary Schroeder,
Here.
Tom Murtaugh,
Present.
Greg Jones, absent, Carl Griffin.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes from the May 6th, 2020 meeting as submitted.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. New business, none. Public hearing, none. On to the approval of the June APC agenda.
I move that the following rezoning petition be placed on the June 17th, 2020 Area Plan Commission public hearing agenda. That's Z 2783 Car Family Farms LLC A to I3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? And for the approval of the June ABZA, we have no new cases to be heard this month. And so we are on to the determination of variances, Lafayette Division.
I move the following request for variance from Unified Zoning Ordinance are not requests for use variance prohibited from consideration by ordinance and statute. And those would be case 2020-09, Brian Henry, Tecumseh Dental Properties LLC, case 2020-10, Evan Peralt, and case 2020-11, Jacqueline E. Clark.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Did we have an opposed? Let's do that again. All opposed? Very well, then that motion carries. On to item 7, review and approval of the April and May budget report.
I move we approve the April and May budget reports as submitted.
Second.
Sally?
Yes, you received 2 budget reports today. We've finally been able to catch up with our timesheets in Timekeeper, which is our APC financial software. So if you look at the budget report from March 25th to April 30th, you'll see the column of expenditures to date. That was basically the last time that we were in the office, but there is nothing of note there. And then there is also May 1st to May 31st. And again, most of that time period, or at least half that time period, we were back in the office and operating as normally. And again, there's nothing particularly of note to let you know about.
Very well then. Are there any questions from the committee? Hearing none, we'll take do we need a motion on to approve the budget as submitted?
You already have a motion.
Made and approved.
Okay, motion approved. So all in favor of the budget as submitted?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? That motion carries. Any other business at this time?
Not that I'm aware of. Thank you.
Gary?
I move to adjourn.
So moved, and we will pass the virtual gavel to Mr. Leverance.
Thank you, Jackson. Let's, Sally, do we need to wait a few minutes here?
I think we're okay to go right ahead.
Okay, we've got, first of all, let's call to order the joint meeting of the Ordinance Committee and the Bylaws Committee. And our only item of business is the discussion about adding a third designated official to sign plats and PDs. Sally and/or Zach, you guys want to address that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start, and then we can have Zach weigh in with any legal opinions. There have been, over the last few months, a number of conversations, mostly by email, between Zach and Jackson and myself, when Jackson was concerned that maybe he couldn't get to the office quite as quickly as he would like to in order to sign plats. We did investigate the possibility of whether plats could be electronically signed, and we learned from the recorder and Zach's legal opinion that anything recorded had to have an original signature. So then that led to a discussion about whether there should be a third person available to sign plats, PDs, and anything else that requires recording. In the statute, it says that the president of the Plan Commission and the secretary are the designated officials for signing these kinds of documents. Then in our bylaws, we also have duties of officers. Under vice president, it says that the vice president shall perform all the duties of the president in his absence. So that gets us a president being able to sign and the vice president being able to sign. Now, there are, for a subdivision, there's at least 10 days, in fact, it's 10 working days, that staff has to review the package of documents required for a final subdivision plat. I suspect that in most cases, 10 days is plenty of time once the filing is perfected. But I suppose if our two designated officials were on vacation, we might have a bit of a problem. So that led us to saying, should we have this discussion today to amend the bylaws to allow for a third designated official for the purpose of signing documents that need to be recorded? Two ideas to kick around is, one could be one of the two county commissioners who are members of the Plan Commission, and the other option would be to make it the immediate past president, if you think that we should have a third person to be able to sign.
And very, very well said, Sally. The statute is, the state statute gives us broad discretion here. It's basically just designate your official people to be the signers, and then it references your individual subdivision control ordinance, which is our USO, that we don't reference as often as we do the UZO, but it is, fairly specific on what it allows and doesn't allow. I think Sally said it exactly. This is more of a backup. I do think in the current world climate, I'm seeing this more with a lot of our other municipal clients. In emergency situations, we have done sort of a cascading power in you know, an absolute emergency. So if the president is there, he acts. If the president's not there, as vice president acts. Vice president's not there. I've done the next most senior ranking member, which means you never have to tweak it again. It's just whoever has the most seniority after those two. I think the idea of having the you know, the commissioner member on there is probably solid, because that's never going to change under statute. They're always going to have a role on the commission. But however you guys want to do it, adding a backup's not a bad thing. It's not going to hurt anything, and it's, you know, it certainly gives us a little bit more flexibility if things change or become difficult, just to reach people.
Zach, is it possible to have the wording of something along the lines of one of the commissioners, or do we have to specifically state?
It would have to be one of the commissioners who is on the plan commission, so that's 2 out of 3.
Correct. One of the commissioners on the plan meeting, or on the area plan.
Correct.
So then that would technically give us an option to have right now at least 4
Correct.
people sign. My fear, and what brought this up and sparked it, is that if I were to be gone, and right now the way that it stands, Larry is gone, and we held someone up because of it, I'd feel pretty bad about it. And so this is simply a way to make sure that things can move along while Larry might actually be in retirement for a month or 2 in January or February, and I would be goofing off at a particular time as well.
Any other comments or questions?
Well,
Gary here. Go ahead, Tom.
No, go ahead, Gary.
I was just going to say, as past president, the signature for me was pretty much symbolic, meaning the staff has approved it, and it was just formality. Plan Commission approved it, and I think the review by the Plan Commission is very important. Having recorded some of those, having Don, Sally review those is important, and when they say everything's okay, then it gets recorded. But I think the 2 commissioners of backup is a good option, because they're typically in the courthouse and available. So I'd be in favor of that.
And that's what I was going to add. It's just, you know, typically we're going to be around. And so, you know, if needed after the current president and vice president, I think it's a sound idea to go with the commissioners.
I support Gary. I support what you said. I think that is a good idea. 2 commissioners.
Do we need a motion, Zach?
Yeah, we do, and we'll probably call roll on this one. I got to figure out who's on this committee, but I've got a couple of rosters here. So,
All right. I move that per discussion, third designated official be identified for signing plats and PDs.
I second that.
Sally, do you feel like you've got what you need to write an amendment for this?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we will draft that amendment, and we have enough time in advance of the June APC meeting that we'll put it on the agenda under new business.
Okay. All right, any other questions or discussion? Okay, Zach, would you call a roll, please?
All right, I've got 2 lists here, and since it's a joint meeting, we're just going to presume we're all voting together. So, Jackson Bogan.
Yes.
Tom Murtaugh.
Yes.
Gary Schroeder.
Yes.
Carl Griffin.
Yep.
Jerry Reynolds.
Yes.
Vicky Pearl.
Yes.
Larry Lebrons.
Yes.
Lisa Dullum.
Yes.
And is Kathy Parker here? I didn't see her.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me.
And
Yeah.
Kathy, all right. How about Jake Gray? Did he make it? Okay. All right. Well, that's sufficient votes for the motion to pass.
Thank you. And with that, I will take a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you, and we're done. Thank you for everyone on that one. And give us a second here, and we'll go right into the ordinance committee. All right, I'll go ahead and call to order the June 3rd, 2020 Ordinance Committee meeting. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of the March 4th meeting.
I move we approve the minutes from the March 4th, 2020 meeting as submitted.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carried. First item on the agenda is allowing small wind energy conversion systems for institutional uses. Kathy.
Yes, so this is something that was discussed at our January meeting and was tabled. Basically, the Tippecanoe School
order, maybe, maybe not, could be someday annexed into the city. And I don't know how many other cities this may affect either. And I guess that was one of our concerns. But as far as having it in Lafayette, the fire stations and schools, I think we've all come to an agreement that we're not interested in that.
Other comments?
we also have a letter to be read. And there's also a second part to this amendment that I forgot to mention. It would remove the 50 kilowatt per wind tower production limit. It was reasoned that if a tower can be created that meets the size limits of a small tower, then the energy produced should not be limited, which makes sense. So that was the second part of that amendment we were going to take care of. And Ryan's got the letter to be read.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Okay. Our letter is from Liz Solberg on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Greater Lafayette. And it reads, my name is Liz Solberg, and I'm co-chair of the Environment and Sustainability Committee of the League of Women Voters of Greater Lafayette. Our organization strongly supports development of renewable energy sources. We ask that you make the requested changes in the zoning ordinance that would allow the Tippecanoe School Corporation to use wind turbines in their school. We realize this means adding quote, residential to the zones in which there can be quote, institutional uses of small wind energy systems. We understand that there has been discussion of shortening the standard list of quote, institutions for a residential zone. We ask that you make the changes that would allow implementation of TSC's requests and facilitate with your decision as much use of wind energy as possible. This would be a financial and educational benefit for TSC. It would allow our community, both in reality and in the image we project, to become part of this significant national economic development trend. Thank you for the opportunity to present our views. That's the end of the letter.
Thank you, Ryan. Kathy, was there any other input that we had on this?
I don't believe so.
I think Brian is also monitoring YouTube and Facebook as we go to see if anybody sends in
a quick question. So the same setbacks would be required, correct? I mean, the setbacks would still be required as per the ordinance currently, correct?
Sure.
So in other words, it's in order for this to happen, there's going to have to be a significant real estate. This real estate's going to have to be large, right?
Well, I should probably point out the size requirements that we're talking about. So a small wind system would have a total height of 140 feet or less, and a swept area of 40 feet or less. So for example, the city bus wind towers are 155 feet. So it's actually 15 feet taller than what we're talking about. And their swept area is 70 feet. So that's much bigger than what this would be.
But still the setback would be what, is it 1.5 times that? Would be the setback from a property line?
I don't know. I'm trying to get Larry's attention because he wrote this report. Hey, Larry, setbacks for small wind systems? Hey, what? Okay. He believes that the setback is equal to the height of the tower.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
And each body would have to approve this if it were to go forward, correct?
I'm sorry?
So each governing body would have to approve this, i.e. Tippecanoe County, Lafayette, West Lafayette, each separately.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we go to the Plan Commission for a recommendation to each of the 6 jurisdictions.
Any other comments?
Yeah, excuse me. Yes, I thought that's the way I explained it to our council, is that it would come back to us and we could either approve. But I think that before we even take this, maybe we could have a draft drawn up that we could actually hand to our, in my case, the Lafayette City Council, let each council member read it on their own and explain to, because we were talking heights, for instance, the other night, and I was just guessing. I said I thought it was going to be around the area of what's at the bus company. And you just already said that it's 15 feet shorter. And obviously blades are going to be smaller. So I think in detail, before we were able to take it back to the Lafayette City Council and the other councils and cities and towns, is that we should have a rough draft of how we may or may not accept it.
Oh. Jerry's idea is correct. It's sort of where we were in January, but you weren't ready to have us draft anything because you wanted some information back from your colleagues first. So I wouldn't say it's appropriate now. If you want us to draft something, that we do that for the July meeting.
We do have an amendment drafted on the back page of the memorandum. But are you talking about like a drawing that shows the size in comparison to other things?
Are you speaking to me?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jerry.
Yes, yes, I think that I think in Lafayette, after we several times as we drive by and view the ones that are on the bus company, it sometimes leaves a bad taste. And you know, we've had some other towers go up in different areas that have not met or being compliant, and I think that. Yeah, I think that's basically what they're looking for. Some kind of a comparison.
Okay. Yeah, we can put something together.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be
The
great.
other thing that we'd like to know is whether you want us to limit or not limit the proposal in terms of which uses would be permitted, accessory small towers. Because we made it institutional uses, but then that includes fire stations, libraries, some things like that. So you need to tell us if you want us to restrict that list or not restrict that list.
I think I'd like to hear what the professional planners, I think that considering restricting it would possibly be a good idea, and hearing as you present it to us, hearing what the professional planners' thoughts would be on a list, the list to restrict, I think could be helpful for us.
Yes,
We
I
can give you a use list if you'd like to do that. And we might be able to take a site or two, both like TDC school and closer in institutional use, and show you what it might look like in terms of setbacks and height.
We're getting a lot of feedback from somebody.
A lot of reverb on that, yeah.
We've worked very hard to get rid of this, and it's kind of hard to do unless we turn the speakers down on our laptops to a level where we can't hear you. That's the only way we don't get the reverb.
Sally, could you simply restate, for whatever reason it sounds better this time, could you restate what you said?
Okay. Oh, we can do a couple things. One is we can give you some options as to which institutional uses should be included or not included, and perhaps give you a choose from list of those uses where small towers would be permitted or not permitted. And in addition, we should be able to, with our GIS capability, to pick a couple of sites, like a TSC school site or two, and some closer in sites, you know, maybe the new library on South 18th Street, and give you a drawing of what a location and the setbacks would be on some specific locations to give you a visual idea.
Yeah, I think that would be a great idea, Sally. I would also like you to maybe look at 18th and Teal, where you have 4 schools, the fairgrounds, a fire station, and what's that going to look like? And if you go to Miami or Edgelia, where you have nothing, where the housing is, they're surrounded by houses. Earhart, we just kind of, I understand you can't do them all, but good and bad, I think they need to be presented with what it may look like, and that may change a lot of minds. Mine, for instance.
Okay, we'll do that, and we'll have that ready for the July meeting.
Thank
Okay.
you. That'd be great.
Thank you, Sally. Kathy, anything else?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
And I currently have no public comment on this item.
Who was that?
Brian.
Okay.
Yeah, currently no public comment on social media.
All right. Very good. Thank you. All right. So we'll see that again, and we'll get that information as soon as you get it out. Sally or Kathy, that would be good to have. I'm assuming you would shoot for our next city council meeting so that we can get that maybe on the agenda at that point too,
Okay.
if that's possible.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Alright.
I'm not sure whether ordinance committee in July is before or after city council meetings, but
Yeah, with the
Either way,
4th, I haven't looked.
I think it's
Okay.
July 1st.
Would it be useful to have it come back to us before we, we might give some useful feedback before it was then taken to city council. Maybe you don't, maybe we want it to go raw, as it were, to the council members so that we can get more feedback. I'm just throwing that out as an idea on which way we want the timing to go there. Council members?
Jerry, any there?
Well, our caucus meeting is the 1st of July, and our council meeting is not till the 6th. So, I think they would need a little bit of time to look at it.
Okay.
I guess I don't know how long it's going to take to put this together. I can get it to, or we can get it to Cindy Murray. She can get it emailed to every councilman and the mayor, and we can look at it, I guess, and we could have it for the caucus meeting for discussion.
I think that's a good idea, Carl, to send it back and maybe we can put some clarification on there. And then Jerry, I don't know if it makes sense to have somebody from the Plan Commission help you with your presentation at the council meeting.
Yes, I think that would be a great idea if it was possible.
So do you want to do that? Have us there at caucus or at the council meeting?
Well, I guess it depends. We haven't been having caucus, Sally. So
Okay.
I don't know what next month or July is going to bring. I guess, maybe we'll know in another 15 or 20 days. I don't know.
I just don't want to confuse this kind of a presentation with the presentation of an actual ordinance. This is more like a work session kind of an item.
Maybe would it be possible for you to maybe contact Cindy Murray, and otherwise she's aware of what we're talking about, and maybe see what she thinks, whether we're going to have a caucus or whether she thinks it ought to come straight to the meeting.
Okay, Kathy and I and Larry will touch base with her.
I think that would be great. Thank you very much.
And Sally, I'll be in touch with you regarding West Lafayette.
Thank you.
What we can do there.
Okay, terrific.
All right. Any other comments on this topic? All right, Kathy, let's talk about business parks and signs.
Okay, so back in March, we were talking about integrated centers and integrated center signs and trying to make Sagamore Commons fit this definition of integrated center. So actually about 25% of the total of the sign, which is fine. It has to be a minimum of 20%. It's 25%, so it's fine. And it's 30 feet tall. And you can see it also has some brick component. So I think our definition checks all the boxes for this sign.
Carl, could we go back and look at the definition that includes the statement about brick, please?
Yes.
So perhaps with Zach's help, but staff's thoughts also, a minimum of 25% of the sign supporting structure. 25% of what? Is this a volume? Is this a square footage? Is someone going to argue, well, it's 25% of the weight? So I'm just wondering if there are some ways to misinterpret that statement, and whether anything needs to be added there to make exactly clear what we do mean there.
So we're going to be looking at something like what is on your screen right now whenever they come in for a building permit. So it's just going to be square footage of this face of the sign.
So above the brick, is that stone? Is that stonework that goes on up, or is that faux stone?
I don't know what this particular petitioner is going to want to install.
So what are we considering to be? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kathy.
Oh, okay.
How much of this is called supporting structure?
Well, whenever we calculate signage, it's the smallest square, rectangle, or circle that encompasses the message of the sign. So for this sign that you're looking at with Sagamore Commons at the top, we would measure all of Sagamore Commons for that particular sign. Then below that, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 smaller signs. We would calculate just within that white area for each of those signs. We don't count the supporting structure to the right or left, if that makes sense.
So in other words, Carl, on this sign,
Yes,
can you see my cursor?
I sure can.
Okay, so the two legs are supporting structures, but so is everything on each side a supporting structure. So 25% of the whole thing I'm using my cursor on would have to be stone, brick, or masonry.
Okay.
But not the top where the name is?
No, because that's a sign.
Okay.
That's one of the sign areas calculated.
All right. Well,
We
you
can
guys
change
have.
this.
Say that again, Kathy.
I said we can change this. We can require additional brick or stone. This is just a draft.
So it says that 25% of the supporting structure must be, yeah.
I think what Doc, and if I'm misstating this correctly, I think what he's a little concerned about is just the ambiguity of saying support structure. So if it helps, if it helps the developer, they're going to interpret it one way. If it hurts them, they're going to interpret it another way. I mean, you could say support structure is just the first 5 feet of the sign because everything else is supported by that. You could say it's both those supports running all the way up to the top. You could claim it's part of that sign, and if we don't want that to be counted, then maybe we say that. But is that closer to what you were talking about there?
Yeah, if you guys have looked at this and you're saying, hey, this is not misinterpretable, then I'm great with that. And if anyone who looks at signs looks at this and says, well, these are the parts that are considered to be supporting structure, and this other stuff is not considered to be supporting structure, and that's the area upon which we will calculate our 25%. Then that's fine. I certainly do not wish to make something out of something that doesn't have any ambiguity. So I think I've probably I have raised my question. If you guys are happy with what it says, then I have nothing further to add or ask.
This is Sally. I would suggest that maybe we take a look at saying that I'm going to say saying it in the negative, so that anything that is not part of the calculated sign area, which we have very well defined, is supporting structure, then I don't think there would be any doubt at all. And I think the question you raised was a good one.
Great idea, Sal.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. This whole proposal is going to go out to our AOs tomorrow. Tomorrow is when we would normally have our 2 o'clock AOs meeting. So I'm not sure how we're going to do that nowadays. But anyway, I will be sending this out to the cities and to Mike Wolf in the county. So, you know, more people looking at it can tell us what's going to work and what's not. Okay, so shall we go on?
Yeah,
This is Debbie
Kathy, can I ask a question here?
Yes.
Going back to what you just had up there, the definitions.
Okay.
Is it up to the developer to designate whether this is a business park, or if in fact they are a commercial subdivision with internal public streets containing more than 2 lots, et cetera, they are without doubt and are designated a business park?
Right. This was something we kind of went round and round on. We couldn't get a handle on it. So that's why we decided if it's a commercial subdivision that has a gateway directory sign, because what we've been told is they like to build those first, so people know what's coming to the commercial subdivision. So if that sign is there, then it's a business park, and then this definition takes precedence.
Okay, so there's no choice by the developer. It's just, that's what it is.
Right. So
Can I ask a question?
if they don't put up a gateway directory sign, then it's just your standard, you know, businesses.
I have a
But-
question,
so-
Kathy.
All right, just 1 minute if I can interject here. So the only thing that makes it a business park is if they put up a gateway directory sign. You can have a bunch of businesses together that's a commercial subdivision with internal public streets containing more than 2 lots, the limits of which are created by a preliminary plat, but they don't have a gateway sign. So what are they then?
They're just a commercial subdivision. For example, what's it called? Purdue Research Park could be called a business park, but they don't have a gateway directory sign. So it's just a bunch of individual businesses.
Okay.
But in fact,
That leads
they have
into my
been for
question.
years wanting a commercial gateway directory sign. So this may be a good thing ultimately for them as well.
That was my question, because this says during the approval process. So if I'm already an existing one, what is the procedures to come back and be able to do this, or can we?
Yeah, good question.
Well, if they are already one, well, if they are already approved, in part, it's going to depend on whether, it may depend on whether or not their internal lot businesses have used the signage for a standalone lot, or have they used the signage, or will they conform their signage to signage of a business park? In other words,
So I'll play the devil's advocate. If you're in Cascada Park, which you probably just answered the question, because each of those buildings out there have pretty much their own signage, but let's just say they didn't for purpose of argument.
Right.
There could be this gateway directory sign, and then each of those buildings could then meet these requirements for signage. But I guess my question was, if it's already an existing subdivision that fits this, is there a way for them to come back and request it if it fit the requirements and it's already an existing one?
Well, if they want a gateway directory sign, I think that their individual lot owners are going to have to agree to reduce their signage, because their names are also going to be on the gateway directory sign.
Yeah, I'm just saying, if somebody fit into this perfect version, I'm just asking, is there a way for them, is there a process for them to come through and ask this if it's an already existing, I'm going to call it gateway park, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, if they're already existing and every internal property complied with the business park signage, then all they'd have to do is go to the proper AO and get a gateway directory sign permit.
I'm only questioning that because in this it says created by the approved preliminary plat. So maybe I'm misunderstanding.
We put
because
that
at
in.
that point,
Yeah, we put that in because a lot of commercial, we wanted the acreage, because we're calculating this based on acreage of the development. We wanted it calculated on the legal description of the preliminary plat, because many times there are multiple final plats and phases. So we don't want a gateway directory sign to be each final plat phase. We want it to be the original overall development as described by the preliminary plat.
So in other words, Vicki, it's sort of an interpretation of how you're reading that line. And I see where both sides are coming from here, but I think Sally, the way, and I read it the same way. It's not going to prevent them. It's just saying, well, as we do the analysis, we're going to start with their preliminary plat to set the bounds on it.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was reading approved in my mind as like a new deal being approved, not like the final plat that's already out there for existing ones.
Yep.
Sally, can you hear me?
Okay, ready to move on?
Somebody's got a question. I think Kathy, maybe.
This is Debbie Mann. Hi, can you guys hear me?
Oh, yes. This is Debbie.
Yeah. I don't know why it says my son's name on there. My question is just along the same discussion you have been having. So let's see, right now we're pretty much developed. I think we got roads and curbs in this week, maybe. We're getting ready to submit for whatever the next plat is that involves culvers. So at what point, again, along the same discussion, at what point do we need to say, okay, we want to be a business park, we want to get a sign? I mean, we don't have a sign up now. We have to, we got to get it developed and sell lots. Culvers is going to close, and that'd be a good time for us to start erecting our sign. So I guess along that same lines, when would we need to, when and how would we designate ourselves as a business park?
Well, first of all, you're going to need to have a sign easement on the final plat that shows where this sign's going to be located. And then I think you can apply for a permit once we get all this adopted.
Okay, so I need to, because I believe our plat is almost done. So you're saying before we do this next, because normally what we would do, so Culver's is going on the one corner, and that's not where
Yeah.
the sign's going to be. The sign's going to be on the other corner. So
Right.
normally what we would do at that point is when I put that under contract with whoever that's going to be, I'd say, okay, and one of the restrictions is you have to give me a sign easement, and we'd show them where we'd want it. And then as we worked through their closing, when it got to closing, we would make sure that that easement was recorded, and then erect the sign. Now, I guess if we do it before we sell that lot, then I don't know how we would do that, give an easement to ourselves. That's always been a question that a lawyer's never been ever able to answer, is if I can give an easement to myself. Because we own the property.
Debbie, my recollection is that plat is not yet been filed and approved and recorded for the lots on either side. I'm not even sure if
We have, I guess, and I don't know all the terminology. Obviously, Tim, our development person, knows that stuff more than I do. My understanding is we have a preliminary plat. Like I have a plat that shows lots, but they're not set in stone. So we can make them whatever size we want. So we're getting ready
Correct.
to do the next plat, which will include all our roads and then also show the size of Culver's lots.
that's correct. So what you need to do is, before you record that final plat, wherever you want that easement, is you make sure that easement shows up on the plat. So it's before it's recorded and before you're selling it.
Okay. Okay, I will let our engineers know they need to change that before we.
And have them consult with Don Lamb, please.
Don Lamb? Okay.
Yeah, our subdivision staff.
Alrighty.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. We have a little bit more to talk about. So in the middle of this conversation about these directory signs, we realized that our freestanding signs is just a little too generous. So we're going to try to tighten things down a little bit here. So what you have in front of you is our sign worksheet. Any business that comes to us and says, hey, we want to put a sign on our property, we fill out a sign worksheet to see how much square footage they're allowed to have on that lot. And it's based on the number of frontages. So if it's a corner lot, it's got frontage 1 and frontage 2. If it's got 3 roads or 4 roads, we would add a column, I guess, to the right of frontage 2. So what we look at is the zone and the road speed limit that the business is located on, the building setback factor. If the building is far back, like Meijer, for example, or Walmart, that has it gets multiplied. Oh no, what did I do? Okay. Oh, okay. And then the last factor is the freestanding sign use factor. So because we are trying to encourage people not to have large freestanding signs, they actually get a bonus if they don't put up a freestanding sign. So that's what that D is there. Okay, so if you could turn to the next slide, Sally. Okay, so this is the other thing that we want to change. This is freestanding sign characteristics. And the first item on this chart is maximum number permitted per sign lot, or the maximum number of freestanding pole signs permitted. And you'll see it says 1 all the way across until you get to the commercial zones, where it says 1 per each road frontage. Well, what that means is if I'm a business and I happen to have 4 frontages, 4 streets, I get 4 freestanding signs, which I think we can all agree is a little ridiculous. So we want to change that. Turn to the next slide. Okay, so down there at the bottom where it says maximum number of freestanding signs permitted per sign lot, we would say 1, unless the total of all street frontages exceeds 2,000 feet. Then a second freestanding sign on a different road frontage than the first is permitted in a commercial zone or for an institutional use in a residential or rural zone. So that means if the lot is large enough, then yes, you can have a second sign. But if it's your typical city lot, you don't necessarily need 2 or 3 or 4 freestanding signs. And then the other change up at the top, change the sign worksheet formula found in Appendix D2. That's that worksheet I showed you earlier. Instead of saying for every frontage, we're just going to say for every frontage not to exceed 2. So if you go to the next slide, maybe I can. Okay, can everyone see this? I hope. So this is the CVS on 18th and Salem. It's actually a business that has 4 frontages: Salem, Union, 17th Street, and 18th Street. So the first, where it says frontage 1, that's Union. Where it says frontage 2, that's Salem. And then in the right margin, that's 18th Street. And on the left, it's 17th Street. So you see, taking all these streets into consideration, they get 266.5 square feet of total signage. They would also be allowed 4 freestanding signs. Now, I think they only have 2. This is actually a planned development, but we're pretending for this exercise, let's pretend it's GB. So yeah, 266 square feet. The total of all frontages is a little over 1,000 feet. So if what we are proposing gets adopted, they would only be allowed 1 freestanding sign. Okay, next slide. So here's a look at that same property with the proposed change. You see they no longer get to count all 4 frontages. They're only counting Union and 18th Street. We don't stipulate which 2 frontages gets to be used, and Union and 18th Street were the 2 frontages that gave them the maximum amount of signage. So that's what we went with. So just looking at those 2 frontages, they get 135 square feet of signage. The maximum allowed freestanding sign is 60 square feet. So they would be allowed 1 60 square foot freestanding sign and then 75 square feet of signage on the face of the building. Does that make sense? Okay, going on to the next slide. Okay, so here's Sagamore Commons. I couldn't find a drawing that had the lot numbers and the new roadway in, so I sort of took one and kind of marked in the lots as I understand them. So I believe Culver's is thinking about lot 3.
Correct.
So is that right, Debbie?
Yes, that's right.
So you'll see it's got 3 road frontages, and the way the ordinance is written right now, they would be permitted 3 freestanding signs if this were a standalone business and not a business park. Okay, next slide. So here is a look at Sagamore Commons Lot 3. I can't read my handwriting. If it were developed not as a business park, but as a standalone business, but with the proposed changes. Okay. So They end up with 150 square feet of signage total permitted. And they get a 100 square foot freestanding sign because the speed limit there is 45 miles per hour. So with our new proposal, if this were just a standalone business, not a business park, this would get 150 square feet of total signage. They could put up a 100 square foot freestanding sign and then have 50 square feet to put on the face of the building. Okay, next slide. So this is if instead of a 100 square foot freestanding sign, they put up a 25 square foot freestanding sign or monument sign. Because they're putting up a much smaller freestanding sign in this case than what is allowed, they're allowed 100 square feet, but with a 25 square foot sign, that's why they get the sign bonus under D. They're putting up less than 50% of what's allowed, so they get a bonus of 1.2. So in that scenario, total square footage they can put up is 172 square feet. 25 square feet would be the monument sign or freestanding sign, which leaves 140, I can't do the math, a little over 140 square feet for the face of the building. So if this were a business park with their own directory, or I'm sorry, with the directory sign that we've been talking about, the gateway directory sign, and with all the stipulations in the definition of business park, they would be allowed a 25 square foot monument sign and 116 square feet of fascia signage. So it would be slightly less than this would get as a standalone business, but they would also get to be on the gateway directory sign. So that sort of equalizes things out. I just threw a whole bunch of stuff at you. I hope you all understood that. Are there any questions?
Do we need to vote on this to take it to the full APC, or what's our next step?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I'm far enough along that I could make this an amendment, but it would be the July meeting, I believe.
I have this, Gary, or I have a question.
Yes.
Kathy, and maybe you explained it very thoroughly, but kind of your opening statement was you thought the sign ordinance was a little too generous, and you went on to explain some, like the CVS at 18th Street, which is a pretty unique property. Was there anything else other than what you mentioned that made you think that it was currently too generous, or is it just a couple situations?
Well, so far businesses have been understanding, I guess. I mean, the ordinance is written that CVS could get 4 freestanding signs, and they don't have 4 freestanding signs, so they just have 2. Another example would be the Speedway station at Creasy and State Road 38. It's got 2 freestanding signs. I think they're about 25, 30 feet apart. And it just seems kind of silly, at least to me, driving by it. I don't think both of those freestanding signs are necessary. But generally speaking, I will say that businesses have not been abusing this. But I'd like to fix the ordinance so they don't have that opportunity.
I would go back to the previous meeting where you mentioned you don't really look at signs, and I don't either if I know where I'm going. It's just if I'm trying to find a place, then the signs are fairly important to me. And it's like, I started looking too, and it's like, wow, I didn't know that was there. 38 and Creasy, I'm familiar with that area, and I think they're just, if you're coming down Creasy, you can't see the 38 sign. vice versa. So they face opposite directions, I guess is the answer for that.
I feel like I can see them fine when I'm on Creasy or 38, but
I mean,
whatever.
they're angled different, and maybe I'll look again.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm missing something you're saying. But to go back to what Vicky said about Cascada, some of those parks, you kind of know your business is in there, and I'm looking for that monument sign that's out at the street. So once I get in there and I'm driving down Mezzanine or Park East, those monument signs seem to be fairly effective. And I'm not sure, are those going to be restricted? And to go along with that, maybe out on Veterans Memorial, when you pull in and some of those businesses are backloaded, when they have those little signs by their entrance to let you know to get in the right parking lot, and sometimes I enter the wrong one, I think those are fairly beneficial. And I'm not sure if those are going to be eliminated or if those are even counted in their signage. And they're just kind of a small directional sign.
I think those Veterans Memorial businesses, a lot of them are small integrated centers. And that's something else we're going to have to take a look at in the future. This doesn't really address any of that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think it would be nice if directional signs were not included in that.
Well, directional signs, based on my recollection, is that you can have directional signs, they just can't have logos on them. So if you have signs that say drive-through, enter, exit, those are, I think in our ordinance, those are directional signs, and those are fine. You just can't advertise your business.
Well, I'm thinking where you're driving down and there's several driveways, and you take an example, you either want to get into Burger King or Kentucky Fried Chicken or whatever else is out there, and those lots are fairly narrow, and it doesn't say drive-through, it either say enter and maybe be in their own color or maybe have their name on there. But somebody mentioned it would be maybe they just kind of slide through and nobody notices them, but they are fairly helpful for me anyway.
Well, this proposal does not affect what's allowed in terms of those directional signs.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments? Are we ready to take this to full APC?
Well, is the time, I mean, do we need to see the ordinance in ordinance form, or are we comfortable knowing what direction that Kathy is taking this? Are we fine with knowing that that's what we're going to have? I guess my feeling is that I think our responsibility is to say, yes, this ordinance, I'm just throwing that out. Should we see this as the ordinance before it goes? I think that if staff feels or Kathy feels that we're sort of on a timeline here, that we need to keep things moving forward, then I'm ready. And if there isn't such a timeline, then let's let it come back to us in its final ordinance form, and then we'll approve it, and then it will go to the APC.
Could I go ahead and file an amendment for the July APC meeting, and then at the July ordinance committee meeting, show you what the amendment looks like? It could be tweaked at that time. Would that be doable?
I'm absolutely good with that personally.
Yeah, we're even doing that. We're still on a timeline. The earliest timeline is city council and county commissioner agendas in August.
Right.
And I think if we go any later than that, we're going to really both mess with Sagamore Commons project and Culver's, and we're gonna sort of mess up what we're trying to do here because Culver's is gonna want to go ahead and get signs, whether this is in place or not. So I would support Kathy's
Right, and
process.
yeah. Yeah, I think we owe it to them to get going here on something. So if we can do that, and if August will work, we'll shoot for that as our final cutoff date and go from there. Will that work? Everyone okay
Yes,
with
that'll
that?
work. Yes.
I have a quick question, Kathy, or
Yes.
somebody. So if we, about the changes to the, not the gateway thing, but what you're proposing on this change to a building that has 4 sides or a lot that has 4 or 3 sides or more than the norm. So if we went with this, and I'm just going to play the devil's advocate, and somebody comes through and says, well, for whatever awesome reason, I need to have it on 3 sides if it fit. Is that something that would go through to variance board, or is it a no out of the gate and nobody else can override that?
Nope, that's something that they could apply for variance for and explain to the BZA why they need that 3rd sign or 2nd sign or whatever.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are we set on that one? We'll see it again on in July then.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Okay.
And Larry, this is Ryan. There is no public comment on this item so far.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any other citizens' comments? Okay, hearing none, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Larry, wait
Yeah.
a minute. You haven't allowed for citizen comments.
Okay, I thought I just asked for citizens' comments.
I thought you asked for that on this particular item, but I'm talking about generally.
I'm sorry. Okay, citizens' comments in general.
I did not receive any email from the West Lafayette Student Climate Group, and apparently they are not part of the meeting live streaming, or if they are, they're not making comment. So I think now we are done.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
no public comment on social media presently.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Now, Jerry, Gary, once more.
Move to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
We're out of here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yes, thanks. Good job,
Good
staff.
night.
Thank you. Have a good evening.